Hello my friends, let's talk NieR. In my last two videos, I talked about two of NieR's narrative themes on our way to understanding the philosophy of NieR. Last time was the theme of power as control, but it is a control that oppresses both those who wield the power and those who are subject to it by taking the freedom away from both. Power is its own entity, it cannot actually be wielded or controlled. Power controls all people. But that raises the question of another one of NieR's themes. What are people? This time the subject is a bit more nuanced in how NieR presents the idea, so I'm afraid I'm going to hide the prestige for a while, and just get right into my points, so hopefully by the end, you'll understand where I'm coming from. The first is that there are multiple kinds of sentient beings in this game's universe. The kind of being that we play as through most of the game are replicants. These bodies were meant to be replacement bodies for shades that retained their individual consciousness. Problem was, once they made these bodies, it turned out that they weren't empty vessels like those silly scientists expected. The replicants had their own consciousness and resisted being possessed by shades. So let's move on to the shades, who were originally called gestalts by the Japanese government, which were created when touching Grimoire Noir. It's actually a pretty interesting name. The word gestalt means when your mind connects pieces of an image to make a whole. It can close gaps, combine images that aren't combined, create images out of empty space, and a bunch of other tricks our brains play when they try to see three-dimensional space in two-dimensional images. The design of the shades reflects this, and their bodies are comprised of 2D sheets that wrap and move in 3D space to create the shape of a humanoid body. See, touching Grimoire Noir not only turns humans into shades, but also turns them into mindless slaves. Weiss and the other books were designed to create gestalts, but not the mind control aspect of them. However, these books still made it so that the shades would eventually relapse into mindless zombie shadows. Only problem was that the only person who managed to keep his mind was Gestalt NieR. His daughter, Gestalt Yona, was not so lucky. But a relapsing Gestalt can overcome their relapse by possessing their own replicant. So, yeah, you would never have guessed NieR was actually a zombie game. Needless to say, the Grimoires are also sapient beings. Next are the automatons, which are all those clunky robots on Robot Mountain, which was called Junk Heap in the English game, but my memory is still Roboyama from the Japanese, so whatever, I'm weird. What's going on with their consciousness? I don't know. Maybe we learn more about that in NieR Automata, I'm hoping we do. And by the time you're watching this, I'm probably already playing that game, so I'll get you an answer eventually. Come back to the channel later for that video. There are also the androids. Yep, there are androids that are a different category in this world. So obviously the main characters in NieR Automata are androids. But the twin sisters, Devila and Popola, are also androids in the original NieR. The purpose of androids in the original NieR was to watch and manage the replicant society until they were ready to be possessed by shades. But since Gestalt NieR was mainly pushing to save his daughter, and as a result kinda fell into Grimoire Noir's plan to enslave all of humanity and the replicants, these android babes ended up just becoming his reluctant servants. Also, side note, if you take a wolf and put it through the Gestalt process, it apparently becomes sapient too. So that's neat. That covers about all my bases, so I'm going to move on. Point number 2 is that knowing all that, it's time to get into the real nitty-gritty, and not just a demonstration that I understand the different factions at work in NieR's story. In truth, the story's themes don't really treat these different factions of sapient beings as being fundamentally different than any other. The sympathetic New Game Plus that lets you read the subtitles of all the different bosses you face is evidence that the game means to demonstrate the similarities of their inner workings over the differences in their bodies. If you are expecting a detailed dive into each of those categories and their nuanced differences that make them each a special flower that misunderstands the other, sorry to disappoint you. but you're welcome for all the time I just saved you on some other video. The Shades are humans. They've lost their bodies, and they've lost their minds. They've lost free will. But they did retain something. The one thing that they have retained is their voice. The language and the memories of their time as humans. When we defeat enemies in this game, we are strengthened by absorbing their words, their voice, and their language. When a shade invades a human body, as they have done with both Kaine and Yona, they become the Black Scroll. Whatever semblance of a body they had left is now purely magical language in the form of moving text. The human has become language. And as a side note, the kanji characters that spell Kaine's name translate to broken sound, showing metaphorically that Kaine is also language. Hence the first New Game Plus mode, which is a novelette of Kaine's backstory. The memories and the sensibilities of the grimoires are also tied to the sealed verses, and this is demonstrated in both the scene where Grimoire Weiss is first introduced and can't remember anything about his past, and the scene where Grimoire Noir absorbs Weiss's powers, making him listless and dumb. Society and law, literature and science, all creations of humanity are created in using and refining language. The replicants, the robots, the androids, the grimoires, they are all products of that language. Hell, this game even took out a huge chunk of time to tell mini-stories in novelette format with no visuals at all in Sleeping Beauty, the tree-shaped supercomputer that saves the memories of Gestalts for when they move into replicant bodies. The final theme of NieR should be pretty apparent for anyone who is following along. It's the idea that people are defined by language. And with that, we have all of the pieces that we need to sum up what the philosophy of NieR is. So join me in the next part when we take each of these themes and translate them into a definitive philosophy of NieR. Thank you for watching, everyone, and stay true.